Hi, everybody. I'm glad to have all of you here today. You know, when speaking to such a large audience, often I get very much nervous. And that's why I have taken several lessons in public speaking right before today's presentation. And they told me that there is a good technique how to stop being worried while on stage. I just have to imagine that people sitting in the front line are outright naked. And in this case, I can be more confident and less worried. So, dear people in the front line, I'm so sorry. Well, you don't believe me, do you? Okay, so I'm Egor. I'm an investment director for a FortRoss Ventures venture capital firm. And I'm going to tell you about how Sberbank once decided to establish its own corporate venture capital arm, but then they abandoned the idea, and I will tell you why this final decision has turned out to be really beneficial for Sberbank's ecosystem. By the way, you know Sberbank, right? Yeah, and Sberbank knows a lot more about you, I suppose. Well, where shall I click? Oh, this way. The 4 steps to epiphany. What Sberbank have been developing its innovative ecosystem for the last 10 years or so. And they made a lot of trials and errors on this way. And, they have finally built a functioning, innovative ecosystem inside. And it consists of 4 complementary parts. So the first part is internal R&D, develop innovations in-house. Well, actually, you can address very detailed requirements of the corporation if you develop the innovations in-house. And you can use all the data available for you, all the data about the clients that Sberbank has on all of you, right? Without any risk of leakage of this data. Just think about last issues on the market of the data leakage. And that's good, but the problem with this is that that kind of approach actually could be more costly than alternative approaches. And even worse, you cannot really develop a disruptive innovation in-house. You just cannot do it. You only can do some minor improvements to the existing solution. Nothing exactly new. So, if you cannot develop innovation, disruptive innovation inside, why don't you buy it outright from the market? You can buy the company with a product, with the technology, but you don't need to spend money on the development, and you don't have risks to do it inappropriately, right? And not just the technology, you can buy the whole team behind this technology from the market, then they will be working for you. And that's completely fine. The problem here is that you cannot really buy a new Facebook this way. Why? Because the founders of this potential new Facebook, they would recognize the potential of the technology, the potential of the product, and they will never sell it so soon and at so small consideration to your corporation, because they understand that the market value of the product is far beyond the scale of your inner department in your bank or whatever. And the value of the company could be someday even more than the value of the corporation. Think about the real Facebook, right? So M&A is good, but you can only buy mediocre companies. You cannot buy market leaders, potential unicorns, and you will not have a disrupting product. Okay, if we cannot innovate in-house, if we cannot buy, why don't we just conclude a contract with a recognized market leader that is already a large, cutting-edge technology? Well, it's a good idea. Why not doing it? This company most likely will have a market track record of a lot of implementations and deployments with other large corporations like yourself. And most likely they will have references from the market experts, from your partners and clients, and your risks will be reduced further. But the problem with this is that you will depend on a third-party solution. Your core service, maybe, would depend on the third-party solution, right? And you will risk your data leakage, remember? And what is even more important, if you conclude a contract with these guys, your competitors also can do the same thing. They also could buy this product from this service provider, and you will never be the absolute market leader. You will never be the best. You can only be as good as others on the market, right? And what if it is not enough? What if you are so much starving for innovations that these three very important parts of the ecosystem are not enough for you? The fourth complementary part of the three is, of course, creating your own corporate venture fund and start growing unicorns there. Think about it. You can invest in a new company, in a really disruptive company, at an early stages of its development, and you can really help them to develop the product. You can become an early adopter of this technology, and you really can even rely on them, because they're not really third party. You own part of the company, and your vote counts here. So you even can influence a little bit this technology development path and make it a better fit to your own internal systems. That's good. But nothing goes without cost. And in this case, the cost is the simplicity. It is not simplicity of this approach. It's very complex and very challenging to establish this whole new line of business, venture capital, in-house. Not just establish it, but also hire the best talent from the market. And you also have to change a mindset of your own employees in your large corporation. It's very, very difficult for such large corporations like Sberbank or any other. Well, but you know what? Nowadays, more and more large corporations are actually starting playing this game. As you can see from this chart, every year there's increasingly more newly corporate venture capital funds are created. What does it mean? It means that even at accelerating pace, you see it. More and more corporations are in the VC market. So it's quite a popular idea nowadays. But Sberbank decided not to do this. They decided not to establish a corporate VC in favor of partnering with an independent VC, with us, FortRoss Ventures. And Sberbank did it on purpose. Why? Because there are few, but very significant differences between corporate and independent venture funds. Which are these differences? What differentiates these two? Well, first of all, corporate venture capital funds, they are more technologically savvy and more business savvy than independent VCs, way more. Simply, they are very tightly connected to a corporation, to its parent company, and they have access to experts inside. They have access to managers, to operationally savvy people, and they really can evaluate the startup's technology better, and they can help startup to develop it better than any independent VC even could do. The second thing, and it's more important, corporate VC can bring in a new large customer, by far the largest for the startup, most likely. And startups really like it because it means new customer, new money, more revenue, and higher valuation next round. But the problem here lies deeper. It lies in a space of a motivation of the two investors. Think about the motivation of an independent VC. It's simple: to increase market value of its portfolio companies, to sell it as expensive as possible, and to become rich people alongside with founders. Okay? And now think about the motivation of corporate VCs. Is it the same? Well, not really. The corporate venture capital funds wants to increase market value of its parent company. That's the purpose of this fund. And this creates inconsistencies between the motivation of the CVC and the founders. And because of that, a lot of great startups really don't want to see the CVC as early investors, despite all the advantages they give. And Sberbank wanted to invest in only the best startups on the market, and that's why they decided not to create its own CVC. And they decided to partner with an independent one with us. Well, that totally makes sense, right? But how does a VC fund communicate to a large corporation like Sberbank? What happens when a vulture meets an elephant? It's complicated. Sberbank had to create a brand new internal ecosystem, brand new institution for this purpose alone. It is so-called venture ambassadors or champions. It's people inside each key department within Sberbank who really are in charge for collecting operational pains of Sberbank's departments and conveying these pains to us. Then we're looking on the market for some possible solutions to address these issues within Sberbank. And when we find it, we approach the startup, and if the startup is interested, we start talking with it as independent VC. We sell ourselves, we sell Sberbank as if we were a corporate VC, as a new largest customer, a potential for the startup to get to the market, to get to new markets in Russia, for example, but without any cost for a startup, without any obligations, which would be implied in the case of a CVC. That's a win-win case for us and for startup, obviously. And at the same time, Sberbank begins working with startup. They begin launching a proof of concept or a pilot, and then if succeeded, concluding paid a long-term contract. That's a win-win situation for us and for Sberbank as well. So, but it is easier to say than to do, and Sberbank, we in Sberbank did a lot of work for this to be live, and we actually have a lot more steps in our communication than it is showed here. But the most important thing is motivation, aligned between us and Sberbank. We need Sberbank as a door opener for our startups, and Sberbank needs us to get to these best startups in the world. That's how this works. And you maybe ask me if this really works. Well, yeah. We are co-investing in startups with the best top-tier venture capital funds worldwide. You can see here some logos: Union Square Ventures, Index Ventures, Spark Capital, in Foundation Capital. It's top 10 or top 20 American and Israeli worldwide VC funds that knows what they do, which help us to develop the companies we invest in as co-investors. And you know, it is an honor to play with these guys. And together with them, we invest in the best-in-class companies around the globe. We invest in, across different verticals like marketplaces, like artificial intelligence, process automations, and other. And we invest across different industries that could be of interest to Sberbank or other our LPs. We have more than 30 LPs or investors in our funds. And we deliver ecosystem boosting. It is what all the corporations want. That is what that is what Sberbank desperately wants from us, to give something that boosts Sberbank's ecosystem. Just to mention 3 companies: GridGain, it's a cutting-edge in-memory grid database. It lies in the core of Sberbank's operations. Its data center. Sberbank already saved tens of millions of dollars with the help of the GridGain, and will save hundreds of millions more. Movin is a personal finance management system that is used by Sberbank's subsidiary, Yandex Money. It's Russian Stripe. It's the B2C channel for them. Tufin, it's a cybersecurity orchestration system used by some of the largest corporations in the world. They have more than 2,000 corporations around the globe, and they are filing for an IPO next week. And Sberbank enjoyed being one of the first early adopters of this technology. So they've got what they wanted to get. And I cannot keep quiet about the lucrative returns that we have as an independent VC together with Sberbank. We have two funds under management, and the first fund that is we invested from 2012 to 2018. It shows like lucrative IRR. It's an annual return for investors of 20% as of the end of the last year, which is good. And we expect 3 companies out of our portfolio in Fund 1 to file for an IPO during the next 12 months. Isn't it good? And we expect the IRR for the Fund 1 to be at least 25 or 30% net at the end. And the second fund, we have just started investing from it at the beginning of last year, and we already have 1 company sold to American fast food giant McDonald's. And we made an awesome 230% return on this deal. Lovely, isn't it? And we have a lot of such deals in our portfolio that help Sberbank to cut costs, increase revenue, and for us and our other investors to make some money. Well, that's how this works. And I'm a little bit out of time, so to make this long story short, Sberbank made a 10-year-long journey with us. And we have some results that we can be proud of. Sberbank, being one of the largest, by far, banks in the continental Europe, at least by market capitalization, is at the same time one of the most innovative banks in the world. That's very challenging to combine these two, being the most innovative bank with being very large in size. But the Sberbank's team, which is led by its CEO, German Gref, we believe is on the right path, and we will help it. So, thank you for your attention.